in the house. Let me hear your bars. Let me see you bite. Let me see your scars. You know what we about. Come see us in the yard. This is war. Go to the heart. Dogs in the house. 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 Dogs in the house.
Hello and welcome to All We Hear is Purple, or the third or fourth most mediocre Husky football podcast on the internet. I'm Andrew Berg. Joining me today, Mark Schaefer. How are you doing, Mark?
Pretty good, all things considered. Just kind of looking forward to this week.
Yeah, we were just talking about how it's difficult to dredge up these memories of the Rutgers game just as we were starting to recover. So I apologize for bringing you through that. And likewise, we'll bring you back into the morass, Luke Kemper. Luke, how are you doing?
Doing all right. If I sound a little off, it is because I don't have quite a pinched nerve in my neck/shoulder, but I just tweaked my back. I think it was just yesterday, so still trying to heat and ice my way through it before game day on Saturday.
It's like Carson Bruner of All We Hear is Purple playing through the pain. Uh, it's
Yeah,
respectable. It's
I can
commendable.
use both my arms. I don't know how Carson is able to even put himself on a field. What a champion that guy is.
Yeah, a linebacker seems like a difficult position to play with one functional shoulder. But he seemed to do pretty well with it. But let's get into the game that we're talking about, the 21-18 Friday night loss to Rutgers. Uh, this seems almost impossible by the numbers. The Huskies outgained Rutgers by 222 yards without turning the ball over. Last year, teams who did that were 282 and 0. They went 2 for 12 on third downs. They had three missed field goals. They had 69 penalty yards. There's a persistent problem converting these yards into points. Even so, the post-game win expectancy from SP Plus by Bill Conley was 3.3% for Rutgers. So if we played this game with the same conditions 100 times, Huskies would have won it 97 times, but not the one that counts in the record book. So, Luke, why has it been such a problem all year to turn these long drives into points?
Well, I think we kind of saw it on the first or second drive when they were in the red zone and they couldn't convert. And I don't, it always has seemed like the first quarter, something is just slightly off, whether it's the route running, Rogers timing. There's just some sort of miscommunication that seems to happen week over week. But then they finally get warmed up as they move through the game and they kind of get back on track. And then Rogers, I mean, the final three quarters, I mean, I thought he looked excellent. But the first field uh, on down series where they were and goal trying to get in and couldn't get in, he did. I think that was the possession that he had on fourth down. That's the one that got tipped and that could have been caught
Yeah.
by Giles. But either way, no, actually, I think that was the that first one was the one where he just threw it way behind a receiver, and it looked like Rogers thought he was going to run one route, and the receiver thought they should be running another one. Just that miscommunication, and you could see Rogers' frustration as he was going to the sideline, and yeah, it seems to me that to not be on the same page to only the second series of the entire game is it could be a combination of not being on the same page as just running the same play, but I think it's the coaches not being able to get their guys in line on what exactly needs to be done. I mean, you've had a week to prepare, and the second series in, you're having these kinds of questions. It kind of raises a red flag to me.
Well, even that first series, the reason they had the 4th and 9 where Rogers threw behind the receiver was because they had the personal foul earlier in the drive. I believe it was on as a party. Is that right? Uh, where they ended up with like a 2nd and 25 or 2nd and 23 or something that forced them into that fourth and very long or fourth and long and went for it in Rutgers territory and couldn't convert. It is super frustrating. It's there all of the computer metrics, the advanced analytics make it look like this team on a per play basis is doing extremely well. And in some ways they are. We run the ball well. We pass it, we pass the ball well. It's all the other things. It's the penalties, the sometimes like bizarre play calling and substitution patterns seems like are kind of getting us uh not maximizing the skill level that we do have. I will say, Mark, the defense has continued to have a better output. The inputs aren't always as pretty, but the output is still pretty good. Holding Rutgers to 21 points on the road is a good outcome. Should be a winnable game. Uh, Kyle Monongai did get 132 yards, but it was a grind for him. He had 25 carries. It was hard work. There were a lot of times we kept Rutgers behind the sticks and forced them to throw the ball. Uh, Now Javon Parker is out for the year with an Achilles injury. That's not going to help with the run defense. Based on this game, how are you feeling about the defense, how they performed in this game, and then also what does it tell you about what they're likely to do going forward?
I think, as you said, the defense did a good job until they didn't. Like the dam held out for as long as it could until it burst, and we had all of their physical backs getting wide open lanes and getting touchdowns. But you mentioned Javon Parker, and he's a big loss. But I think that's also compounded by Carson Bruner was playing through probably an ungodly amount of pain because you could see him wincing like as he was getting lined up, and he, depending on whether he's able to go, which I don't think he'll be able to, but then again, I didn't think he would be able to last week. So uh, I don't know how this Michigan game is going to go because they're going to want to run the ball, and we've lost our best defensive lineman and our best linebacker. So guys are going to have to step up. Uh, because beyond that, it gets pretty thin. I mean, we got Devin Bryant, Hayden Moore, the Michigan transfer. They really haven't played much. Anthony Ward, who I believe is a linebacker, he could be an edge rusher. Uh, but this spate of injuries is not a good sign for the defense going forward.
Yeah, that is problematic. I will give a lot of credit to not only the guys who are playing, but also to Steve Belichick. It's they some of the video breakdowns Coach B has done show how they've disguised coverages and made it complicated for opposing offenses to uh, anticipate what is coming on the defense. And that's what we were hoping for, that we'd be doing a lot of different things, that we'd be confusing opposing offenses, we'd be taking away what they're good at, or at least making it more difficult. And I think so far we're, 5 games in and it hasn't been a resounding success on a team level. But defensively, you have to feel pretty good about the game planning and the play calling on defense and how it's been keeping the Huskies in games even when the offense has been sputtering at times.
Yeah.
So I think, going back a little bit to the offense, not only how it played against Rutgers, but just where we are in the season so far. It's odd. You can mostly say good things about Jonah Coleman. Played really well. He's been banged up and probably hasn't had carried the workload that anybody would want, but he's close to it, and he's been extremely effective as much as he's been able to play. Will Rogers' stats are excellent. Still hasn't thrown an interception. Completion percentage is very high. He's getting his guys in the right positions, and then therefore Denzel Boston, Giles Jackson, and even to a lesser extent, DeAndre Hunter and Kaleki Latu have had good years so far. Like skill position guys generally are playing pretty well. So I'll ask you both this. I'll let Luke go first. What do you want to see more of, and what do you want to see less of with our approach to the offense to try to kind of make this click a little bit more, since it's clearly not going exactly in the degree we want it to go?
Yeah. It's funny, right before we started recording, I was looking at the play-by-play of the Rutgers game, and I noticed something. I went back to the previous game, and I checked all the games, And with the exception of the first game, the Weber State game, would you be surprised to know that with the exception of only 2 of our scoring drives this year, every single other scoring drive that Denzel Boston has caught a pass?
Hmm.
So with that in mind, I would love to see Denzel get some more targets because, I mean, we all know what kind of weapon he is. He is big, strong, runs a good route, and he is tough to bring down. He is a very, very talented receiver. I mean, we've known that basically from the flashes of last year, but from spring and fall camp, we knew that Denzel was going to be that guy. So I mean, I would be really thrilled to see him get even more action. Ironically, I mean, he had a ton of catches against Weber State too, and that was the one game where we would still score in a multitude of ways, even on drives that didn't involve him. But yeah, moving our first touchdown against Rutgers was that huge pass to Denzel, and then we actually started getting into the end zone as well, because we started working Denzel in. And I was really glad to see that Hunter got involved early as well. I I was that was the first thing that I had mentioned after the Weber State game is Hunter didn't have a catch. We got to get that guy more involved. So just striking that balance a little bit more. I know that there's only one ball. There's a lot of really talented pass catchers in the system, but getting everybody a little piece of the pie with all the different skills that they bring is definitely the best thing that you can do. I understand Coleman's banged up. We all want to see him get the ball more, but you really do have to think about his long-term health, as not just for the rest of the season, but the rest of his life. I mean, you're not going to want to work that guy to the bone when he's should be seeing playing time on Sundays in his future. You don't want to shortchange him just because you're trying to get some wins. The one thing I would like to see a little bit less of is predictable screens. I'm definitely not opposed to screens or bubble screens, but I am not the most football literate play caller, far from it. But if I know a screen is coming, that's probably a bad sign because I'm sure that the defense is going to recognize it a lot faster than I am. So stop being a little cute and predictable with your screen calling. Be
That
a little more ambitious on trying to move that ball down the field.
That's a fair point about the play calling. We also have not executed screens very well. That's something that it's never been such a glaring, flashing red light that it's come up on the podcast. But there have been plenty of times when we've run screens and it's developed so slowly, or somebody just misses the initial block and it just doesn't work. It just has not worked at all and had no chance of working. But I mean, I think you hinted at this. When we say we want more for uh, Hunter, we want more for Boston. And Boston, I mean, that 51-yard touchdown, the wheels he showed on that's kind of been the one, I wouldn't say knock, but it's like the one thing that prevents him from being a truly nationally elite receiver is top end speed. And he just ran away from all of the defensive backs on that play. He showed
Mm-hmm.
plenty of speed on that play. It was very exciting to see. But so you give them more opportunities, more targets. I guess maybe we're taking something away from like the other running backs, Adam Muhammad and Cam Davis, maybe to fit those targets in, or maybe we're just removing some of these screens. I don't know, but it is complicated. Mark, you have any additional thoughts on kind of how you would rejigger this offensive distribution to make things work a little bit better?
I would now, like Luke, I am not the most football literate in terms of like I don't know what they're gonna call in the red zone. But I stop getting too cute with your red zone play calling. Like
Yeah.
even on that drive where
Mm-hmm.
Jonah had runs of 35 and 11 to get us down to the Rutgers 4. I understand you'd have to take them out, but we got Cam Davis. I mean, y'all saw what he did against Colorado 2 years ago, where he flipped into the end zone. Like he can get you the extra yards, and Adam Muhammad's really good at that too. So I don't know why we're throwing in the like on the 2 yard line. Like sometimes it's like Jed's like, oh, I'm gonna outsmart you. You're not gonna see this coming, and then he throws, and then or he dials up a pass play and it's incomplete.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder if that has to do with the trust in the offensive line against these packed boxes. But I have had the exact same thought. Like we've run the ball extremely well for the whole drive, and then we get down inside the 5, and it's like 3 out of 4 play calls will be passes where the timing is just off. It's very frustrating. Um, I will say, I was talking about Rodgers. I've developed a theory that he gets a lot of criticism. It seems like a lot of fans just don't like him. I think it has to do with his natural facial expression. He has kind of this droopy, unhappy facial expression. Like he always looks like something really bad has just happened, even when he's
That
playing really well.
that's why I
Um,
say he looks uncomfortable. That's why I say he looks uncomfortable all the time.
yeah, even when he's doing extremely well. I don't, maybe he is uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm not in his head,
Mm,
but I think his facial expression isn't doing him any favors. Uh,
I'm not gonna fault him for that. I mean,
no.
I've talked to Will Rogers, nicest guy you could ever hope to meet. I mean, he is just polite and but he's also poised and you can tell that guy just I had one very brief conversation with him, natural born leader. I mean, there when it's time for business, that guy is all business. I don't care if what his face looks like, as long as he's willing to lead those guys and they're listening, it's fine by me. The way he
Yeah.
looked those
No,
last
I'm
three
I'm with you
quarters, hell yeah, I'm
a
all
hundred
on board.
percent. I mean,
And
the stats that he put up at Mississippi State, we were saying like, well, that was an air raid offense. We can't expect that. He's got a career high completion percentage and a career high yards per attempt. That he's doing better than he did in the air raid offense. He's amazing. And I think sometimes people, some of the fans are not giving enough credit just because he has kind of a hangdog expression some of the time. So I'm not, uh, I am a big Will Rogers fan.
Yeah,
Mark,
yeah,
did you
I,
want
shout
to
out
add
to you,
something?
Will.
yeah, he's definitely made a fan. I mean, I admittedly didn't know what to fully expect going into the season, but I am a big fan, big fan.
So in summation, we love all of the key parts of the offense. It's doing great. We're continuing to score 18 points in a game. Nobody really knows why, but hopefully we can turn that around. We'll have a chance to turn it around against Michigan. We'll take a little break. We'll come back in part 2, and we will discuss that upcoming Michigan game. Welcome back. The Huskies will host Michigan this weekend, the defending national champions, in a rematch of the national championship game. It's been an interesting few years of this matchup. The Huskies traveled to the Big House a few years ago. The return match was canceled due to COVID. Then they made it up in the national championship game, and now Michigan finally comes to Husky Stadium in a conference game. So we get this 3-part series in a very unpredictable way. Michigan, for their part, has been one of the strangest teams in the country so far this year. They started with Davis Warren at quarterback. He's kind of a journeyman, not a big time recruit. He got the job
Yeah,
over
walk
Alex
on.
Orji because, yeah, he's a walk-on, lightly recruited, but ended up walking on. Uh, Orji was the presumptive starter after JJ or with McCarthy going to the NFL, and he did not get the job because they thought Warren would bring more balance to their offense. Didn't work out that way. Uh, they've just leaned into being a complete running team. They beat USC 2 weeks ago, 27-24 with 32 passing yards. They beat Minnesota by the same score this week with 86 passing yards. So Luke, do you think this is just what they're going to be? They're just not even going to really make an effort to have a balanced offense? Um, are the Huskies going to have to kind of prepare themselves for like 50 plus runs and Orgy being a full-time extra back running back in the backfield?
I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. I mean, if you're still winning games, I doubt Michigan's too worried overall about passing it. Now, is it sustainable against the rest of the Big Ten? I don't believe so. I mean, can you imagine trying to run it 60 plus times against Ohio State with when they're not afraid of you throwing the ball? Mm-mm. I I don't think they're going to have great success there. But will they have success against the Huskies on Saturday? I was crestfallen when Parker got hurt. So
Yeah.
when your best defensive lineman goes down and that room is one of your thinnest, that does hurt. So I think that if Michigan were to employ that strategy, really lean into that run heavy offense, then yeah, they would have plenty of success. Granted, very different team from the national championship and defensive scheme and whatnot, but that's all they had to do to be in the national championship game. Hartley didn't need to do anything hardly
Yeah.
at all. So, I mean, they've proven that they can do it. Belichick's, I'm hoping, willing to lean into that as well. Of hey, they're going to run it on us. If you can make Orgy have to beat you with his arm, I think that is your best chance. So I hope that we're taking that into consideration. My wife's uncle, huge Michigan fan, born and raised in Michigan, went there for his undergrad. So anytime I want to talk Michigan, I hit him up, and I was chatting with him about Orgy in the off season. I was like, well, I was saying that this guy must be your heir apparent with McCarthy gone, and they kind of used him last year. How we've been employing Demond this year,
Yeah. Yeah,
bringing
very
him in
much.
for some run threats, little quick hitters, just to really throw the defense off. And he looked electric. I can tell you that last year when Orgy was in, he was a huge threat. Very different runner than Demond, but the same type of big playability. So
Yeah,
it
he's
is a big threat. You do have to consider on. I mean, his big weapon is his legs for sure. It's not how people were criticizing Milrow last year, where oh yeah, he's gonna run first, but Milrow could still really hurt you with the arm.
Yeah, and Orgy is not just quick. He's very powerful too. He's about 230
Mm-hmm.
pounds, probably
Very
6'2"
strong.
or 6'3", 230 pounds, and can kind of bowl guys over in addition to having really good speed. It'll be a challenge to bring him down. And like you said, the defense is thinner. I will give again. I just was praising Steve Belichick and the defense. They had some pretty heavy boxes last week, and it was helping give some support to the defensive line. And we do have the D-backs to at least hold up somewhat. And I think we've seen that between Dixon and Jackson and Prysock kind of holding up in one-on-one coverage on the outside as well as could be expected. There's the occasional defensive holding or the pass interference, but you're going to get that when you're asked to play one-on-one. And they're loading up the box, and it has helped. There were a few big plays for Monongai, but he had to do a lot of work, and it ultimately they got them off the field more often than not. So I think we're probably going to see more of that. It's just a question of whether we can get any push up front to kind of negate that initial wave of Michigan blockers and the running game. But
Yeah,
even setting that aside, yeah, go ahead.
oh, yeah, I was just going to say that as good as our offensive line was last year, I mean, Michigan's offensive line, although we won the Joe Moore Award, their offensive line was damn good last year too.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
also coming in with 5 new starters as well, so definitely a lot of different transition from the team that we knew last year. If anyone saw the Texas Michigan game, you know this is not last year's Michigan team by a mile. So
right. Yeah, and I think to that point, that Texas game was kind of a low water mark for their defense. I guess you can't have a low water mark because the rest of the water would wash over that water. But the defense uh, did not play well against Texas. This is the
yeah,
calling card for this team.
Yeah,
And
I'd
they
never seen Michigan miss tackles last year. That's the one thing I was always super impressed by last year. I really noticed in the championship game, of course, but man, that defense, they were so technically sound. They never missed a tackle. I mean, they were missing three a play. It's like I was watching UW's defense last year when I was watching Michigan play on Texas.
Yeah, but you have to give them credit because they have bounced back quite a bit. Both the USC game, while there were kind of some ups and downs in that game, but also last week against Minnesota, the defense played a lot better. The offense hasn't always put them in good positions because they're very one-way offense, as we were discussing. But the defense gives up very few big plays. They keep everything in front of them. They've tackled well. It has been possible to sustain longer drives against them. That's the one thing that the knock you can give on this defense. And even a team like Minnesota, which is not explosive at all, was able to move the ball kind of slowly but surely with short passes and um, get a few first downs here and there. But Mark, what do you think is the recipe for success in this game? Like, how do the Huskies kind of leverage some of those things we were talking about earlier that are working well on offense and put them together in the right formula to put together first downs, but also turn them into points against a really good Michigan defense?
This is a very different matchup from last year on both sides of the ball because last year we had a transcendent passing game complemented by a really, really good run game. But now, this year, we're kind of a little bit more balanced. But then Michigan is balanced on defense too because they have playmakers everywhere. So I would say try to run, but then if you run, you have an inexperienced O line and a couple of a couple of guys on the D line, Mason Graham, and there's one other guy. Why am I blanking on his name? Uh,
Mason Graham is the big name that I remember.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
have
it's
a very
Mason
good
the
Graham's the
defensive
big
end
the
name.
too.
guy from
Uh,
Chatsworth, California. I know who you're talking about. Let me look him
but
up real fast.
I think even when you pass the ball, you got Will Johnson right there. Will Johnson is one of the best defensive backs in college football. He's got two pick sixes already.
I'd argue, other
So
than Travis Hunter, I'd argue the best in college football. That guy is locked down.
yeah, yeah. Uh, so I think the plan is for the defense to do most of the heavy lifting, and then for the offense to just be mistake free, and just maybe we can get a win.
Yes, our specialty being mistake free this year.
Yeah. Well, let's take that all into consideration. This is kind of a bizarre thing that the team is the Michigan is number 10 in the country. The Huskies are unranked and obviously deservedly so. Not close to the top 25 right now. Um, but the Huskies are 3 point or 2.5 point favorites in this game, depending on where you look, 2.5 to
God,
3.
shocked the hell out of me. I can tell you that much.
We
I
have a 58 to 42% chance to win, according to
I
FPI.
know, still wild to me.
that yeah, it's shocking to me. I think SP Plus has us as like a less than 1 point favorite, but the favorite in the game. The EPA metrics for College Football Insiders has it also within a point one way or the other. All these things surprise me when I'm looking at the X's and O's and how this game is likely to break down with the individual units. So tell me, both of you guys, give me you don't have to give a specific score, but who's the winner and what's the game kind of look like? Luke, you can go first.
Well, like I mentioned before, with Parker out, I foresee difficulty fully containing the run. I mean, one thing Michigan will never be short of is very talented running backs. Donovan Edwards is supremely talented. I mean, we saw the damage he did last year against us on that first touchdown Michigan had. Good grief. He is pretty much everything you could hope to want in a running back. And with a dual threat quarterback, I mean, more so on the running side, of course, but with Orgy and it, no matter who the coach has been over the past 20 years, dual threat quarterbacks always just seem to have UW's number one way or another. And unfortunately, with all of our injuries, I just have a tough time seeing us overcome that. I'm not going to pick a score right now, but it's the big what if of last year when we lost our starting running back, thanks to Bohr for that one. Because man, DJ was awesome last year and hurt in such a manner. Gosh, sickening. But I digress. If we we're gonna wonder if we do lose this game, especially close. Oh man, if Parker was healthy, if Bruner was healthy, the what ifs will haunt us again for yet another year.
Yeah, that sounds very possible. Mark, you feel any differently? You have any different calculations on the game?
You know, I've never wanted to pick against the Dogs, and I'm not going to start now, but I know in my head that we're probably going to lose this game, and it's probably going to be ugly. But you know what? Let's find out who can step up on defense because who knows? Maybe Kamori House will play out of his mind, recover like two or three fumbles, and even now that I'm saying that, it just sounds ridiculous. But uh,
Yeah,
yeah, I
the
can't.
turnover probably big.
I can't pick against the Huskies though.
I respect it.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be ugly. I think it'll remain relatively close, but I think we're going to have a tough time scoring a lot of points against this defense, and I think Michigan will be able to put together long drives, and that probably amounts to something like a 24-17 or something in that neighborhood, something like a one touchdown Michigan win would be my bet, but we shall see. Hopefully, I do think this Washington team, like you said, if they play mistake free, if that somehow they defy what they have been to this point, in penalties and in fumbles and in randomly running onto the field during plays, taking if those you could take those things away, like they have the capacity to be really good. Like there is the raw materials of a very good team here somewhere. So I'm not ruling out that they can do a lot better. I just need to see it on the field before I start picking it. Let's talk quickly about some of the other news from around the region and the country. The top of the Big Ten right now probably looks like Ohio State, who hasn't really played anybody yet, Oregon, who started rough but didn't lose and has kind of righted the ship, and then Penn State, whose offense looks a lot more capable this year to go with the usually excellent defense. Mark, power rank those three teams for me: Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, at least for right now.
Penn State actually having an offense is kind of scary to me, and it it's kind of like, was that all they needed? It's
Yeah.
just an option offense to allow their athletes to get in space. Uh, Ohio State, they need to beat somebody for me to be convinced that Will Howard's an actually good quarterback. And Oregon, because always I don't like Oregon.
Oregon is ranked third because personal reasons. Very fair.
Yes.
Well, they finally look like they put it together a little bit against UCLA. I will definitely give them that.
Yeah,
They
UCLA is kind of
didn't.
the cure to what ails teams this year.
But yeah, I was gonna say at the same time it's UCLA. So
Yeah, but still, you never know with those late night games how crazy they can get.
That's true.
Former Pac-12 after dark.
Um, so the other team who's kind of knocking on the door of this, certainly without the pedigree, is Indiana.
Go
I
Hoosiers! Woohoo!
said something before the year, like I'm fully buying into Kurt Signetti, but I don't know if this is a like 1 year or multi-year rebuilding project. I think we have our answer on that. They're 5-0. Their next four are at Northwestern, who, as we've seen, is terrible. Nebraska at home, which should be a good game, but it's certainly within the realm of possible to win it. Hosting the Huskies, which, will be a good game, and then at Michigan State. So there's a real chance here of being 9-0 before they play Michigan and Ohio State later in the year. They miss Penn State, they miss Oregon on the schedule. Would you give this team, Luke, a puncher's chance at this point of making the 12 team CFP?
Well, as I said, go Hoosiers. I have a ton of extended family in Indiana. Love me some Hoosiers, love me some Boilermakers. We got a pretty split family in that regard, but about who goes where. But so I am actually very happy to see Indiana doing well. It warms my heart when a non-traditional football power just makes an unexpected run like this. I think any casual fan should feel the exact same way. Will they make an extended playoff run? As much as I want to say yes, in my heart of hearts, I know that's probably not the case. And it's like they say, it's not about the X's and O's. It's more than often about the Jimmies and Joes. And Indiana still is in a bit of a rebuild. And it's not like Indiana was coming off of a powerhouse season of a New Year's Six Bowl caliber roster beforehand. So it's not like they're just bringing in a new coach and it's business as usual. 5-0, make no mistake, is still a bit of an anomaly for Indiana despite a lighter schedule. So I would love to see Indiana continue to build upon their success that they've had this year. But when you see how well the SEC has looked this year, it's going to be tough to get more than 4 Big Ten teams in, I think, this year. And the 3 that we already mentioned, I think will probably make it in, assuming all goes according to how most people see it going. But I don't know. I'm not sure if a 4th will even make it from the Big Ten this year. We'll see.
Well,
I mean,
that
USC would
game that
probably be the one for me if there was a 4th.
yeah, it's too bad we don't get to see Indiana USC because that might be kind of functionally a play in. But that Indiana Michigan game does loom large, depending on what happens for Michigan between now and then. But yeah, I don't know. They don't if they have anybody named Jimmy or Joe, but they do have Curtis Rourke, and he has been awesome since transferring from Ohio. Uh, Big plays all over, deep passing game. He's not throwing interceptions, he's completing the ball. I'm a fan. He's Canadian, the Canadian quarterback at Indiana. Good for him. Um, so let's wrap it up with our recommendations and plugs. Any non-football things this week, Mark, that you want to recommend to the listeners?
No non-football things, but I want to give a quick shout out to Lance Holtzclaw. I met him at Media Day during the national championship, and he signed my football and everything. And as he was going back to his teammates and whatever, I said, "Hey Lance, sack JJ McCarthy a couple times for me." And the look on his face was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can do that, but I'll try." So Lance, sack Alex Orgy for me.
We'll settle for tackles for loss, I think, because I don't know how many drop back opportunities there are going to be, but let's go, Lance.
Yeah.
I like it.
Or a
I
blocked
mean,
field goal
we'll
that can
count him.
stand.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not his fault.
Or don't
Luke,
erase
anything
his
on your end?
field goals.
Any non-football related recommendations that you've got?
I had one very well prepared, but I'm going to give 2 actually. Because if you are in Seattle or in the surrounding area, there is a restaurant in Cap Hill called Bang Bang Noodles. It's spelled BIANG. So Bang Bang twice. Super, super good. Oh my gosh, absolutely delicious. And all the noodles are homemade and they're really long, which is definitely a little on the different side, but and very, very reasonably priced too. With how inflation has been, huge value for your dollar there. That's the one I didn't have prepared. The one I was going to talk about was actually an album. I know I've given 2 shows in the past, but if you are a Post Malone fan and or a country fan, his new album F1 Trillion is excellent in my opinion. And even if you're a casual country fan, I mean, the people he has on the album with him: Tim McGraw, Hank Williams Jr., Morgan Wallen, Blake Shelton, Dolly Parton, Luke Combs, Brad Paisley, Lainey Wilson, Jelly Roll. I mean, that is and like an all-star lineup that anyone would love to see. And for them all to be on one album is it's really good. I mean, it's been pretty hard to avoid his big hits from that album if you listen to the radio at all or shuffle on Spotify. But yeah, definitely worth a listen to go through the whole album.
I am not a country music person, and I have heard of almost all those people, so it's definitely a pretty impressive list. Uh, I've been traveling this week. One of my staples when I'm traveling is I'll go through the back catalog of a podcast called Blank Check. It's a movie podcast, but they go through an entire director's filmography in order, and they'll pick one director and then the next. I had the old David Fincher movies queued up, and I listened to their podcast about the movie Seven. It's just a super interesting podcast. They go into a lot of depth. It's a movie critic and an actor, so they kind of know the how it was made, like the how it was negotiated, how the script got in front of the director. But the stories about Seven were great, about how so many people read the script and were so disgusted by it that they were like angry at their agents for even letting them read the script in the first place. But it worked out pretty much perfectly between Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt. I think they pretty much nailed it. But if you ever need a long podcast to get through, like a road trip or a flight or something, Blank Check is definitely a good one for that. Just pick a movie you've watched a bunch of times and listen to them talk about it. So that's all we've got for today. Apologies to Cody Pickett. We weren't able to squeeze you in this week, but I don't think he really wanted to talk about this Rutgers game anyway. Hopefully, we'll have time next week for the Cody Pickett interview. In the meantime, thanks everybody for listening, and go Dogs.
Go Dawgs.
Go Dogs.